I'm really excited actually, because we're going to start to learn about some different ways that you can tame our inner critics, which is always going to be a helpful tool. Oh, there we go.
There
That's
you go.
me. I'm just going to actually hide the box of participants so that there we go. Okay, so I'm Sarah. This is me before I cut my hair. And I actually help a lot of people who struggle with challenges related to ADHD, OCD, those who struggle with managing stress, and perfectionism challenges. So, what we're going to do here is we're going to explore something that comes up for a lot of people, not just for ADHDers, but for a lot of us in general, which is self-criticism. We're going to explore why this comes up so strongly for those who have ADHD. We're going to look at some impacts of the self criticism and some tools to help us shift towards self compassion. Of course, we're going to leave room for any questions that you may have towards the end. Before we dive in, I want to get a quick temperature check of all the participants here. So feel free to hop in the chat and share which animal you most resonate with today. I will be honest, I don't love an icebreaker, but any opportunity to look at cute little animals, I'm all here for. So feel free to just write in the chat. I will also share just to kind of kick us off. Okay, we got a four. Maureen's a four. I love that. Okay, so we're a little tired today. We got a two. I love that one. Looks kind of suspicious.
Another two.
Another two. Awesome. We got some tired folks here today. That's all right. We got a four. We got a six. And a three. I love three. That one just so sweet.
The glasses.
The glasses make it, right? Little peckish little hamster. All right, we got a four, six, and three. We got a one from Audrey, a four from Matt. There we go. Okay. And I think that might be everyone. So I'm just going to pop in and share that I'm a bit of a cross between the hedgehog here because I'm feeling engaged and excited to be with all of you tonight. But I'm also a little bit of a five because I'm really excited to be sharing this space with everyone here. All right, Gareth, I want to hear from you. Where are we at today?
This morning, I was more of a,
Oopsies.
I was more of a nine, I would say. Now, without my coffee, I'm more of like a two or a three.
That's the key, right? Coffee will regulate everything.
Oh, yes.
Love it. Love it. Well, I hope everyone leaves the session today feeling like a five. That is the goal. Okay, so let's start off with a big question, right? Why are ADHDers so susceptible to self-criticism? Why do these two things go hand in hand? Well, there's a few reasons for this, right? So we're talking about executive function impairments. This makes it harder for people to plan, to prioritize, to follow through with tasks. It doesn't matter if you care a lot about that thing, like a friend's birthday, sometimes we'll forget, right? And that will often lead people to deal with this internalized feeling of guilt or shame, which isn't great. Of course, we have something called rejection sensitivity dysphoria. I'm going to refer to this as RSD for brevity's sake because it's long. But this means that even just a hint of criticism can often feel like this deep emotional threat for ADHDers. As well, we have this thing called internalized messaging. So many people who have ADHD, they've heard some version of, well, why don't you just try harder or stop being so dramatic growing up? And so over time, these messages do become internalized and they are harmful to our self concept. So when we take a zoom out approach, we can see that the answer somewhat lies within how ADHD impacts the brain, but also it's compounded by all of the messaging that ADHDers have heard while growing up. I want us to take a look at this pattern that many of us know all too well. This is called the shame spiral. And this illustrates to us how something so small, like seemingly so small, like missing a meeting or being late for an appointment, this can quickly snowball into this full-blown shame experience, right? So, like I said, it might start with something seemingly manageable, like you're late for a doctor's appointment. But then that inner critic is going to jump in and it's like, but wait, why am I always like this? Why can't I get it together? Or even worse, I'm such a screw up. I've heard that before. Then you start to feel that shame. That doesn't feel good. You start to shut down, right? Maybe you're canceling your plans. Maybe you go back to bed. Or maybe you're even avoiding what you're really stressing out about by picking up your phone and doom scrolling, right? But that just deepens that shame spiral. Then you start to question, what's wrong with me? Why do I keep doing this? Eventually, you find yourself caught in this emotional turmoil that honestly feels very paralyzing. So we can blame these people, okay? These aren't real people, but these are the different types of inner critics that we tend to have. So I'm going to go through each of these. Just I'm going to try to make it as engaging as possible. But what I want everyone to do here is I just want you to take a quick mental note as to which ones come up the most often for you. Okay. So the first one we have here is the perfectionist, which is exactly what it sounds like. That little voice in your head that's like, oh, but you should have done better. That's not good enough. What were you doing? The goal of this perfectionistic voice is to push for high standards to avoid that judgment or failure. But the issue with this is that it will often lead to burnout, feelings of wanting to procrastinate, and unfortunately, this feeling of like chronic dissatisfaction. Not ideal, to put it lightly. Then we have the taskmaster. This one I want you to picture is sort of like that toxic, productive voice in your head. It's like, work hard, don't be lazy, don't take breaks. You got to keep going in order to get the results that you want. And this one will motivate you through fear. This one will often create anxiety and that feeling of guilt when you're trying to rest. So, again, we don't love that. We also have something called the inner controller. This one is that voice in your head that's like, oh, no, you can't eat that. You shouldn't have eaten that. That's bad. Don't act out. Keep yourself in check, right? The goal of this one here is to control you. It's trying to manage your impulses and urges to avoid shame or judgment. But unfortunately, what happens here is this can often lead to self-restriction, right? Obsessive thoughts and unhealthy control methods that you adopt over your body and your behaviors. Again, not great. We also have the guilt tripper. Exactly what it sounds like. This one's like, how could you do that? Like, what are you doing? You're such a bad person, right? The goal of this one is to keep you in line with your moral or your relational expectations. But unfortunately, with this one, it's often tied to people pleasing and feeling that excessive guilt and shame, which not ideal. We also have the underminer. This voice sounds like, oh, you're not good enough. You're going to fail anyway, so why would you even bother trying? I'm sure we've all heard a version of this at some point in our lives. And the goal of this one is actually to try to keep you safe, air quotes on safe, by discouraging you from taking any risks. But this is actually linked to undermining your self esteem, your confidence, and it fuels this feeling of hopelessness. So, not helpful. We also have the shamer. This one is like, oh no, you're too much for people. Nobody could really love you. The goal of this one is to protect you against vulnerability by reinforcing this feeling of shame. This honestly will negatively impact our relationships if you haven't guessed already. It's not a great one. We're almost there. We got the comparer, then one last one. The comparer, it sounds like, oh, well, they're better than you. You're never going to measure up to them. And the goal of the comparer is to push you to conform or to compete by comparing yourself to other people. The issue with this one, well, it's going to cause jealousy. It's going to breed feelings of inadequacy. And it often leads to this feeling of self-doubt, right? I saved the worst for last, the destroyer. It is exactly what it sounds like. Um, this one will get in your head and it will convince you that you're a failure. You don't deserve to be here, even. It will take it a step further. This one is really tough to deal with because it's often rooted in trauma. It will try to numb the pain that you're experiencing by attacking yourself. And this is often tied to that depression and suicidal ideation. Okay. Now, I do just want to put a quick little disclaimer out here as we're going along. Obviously, we're talking about shame, we're talking about inner critics. This can be heavy, right? So if anything is coming up for anyone here, any of our participants, you can obviously take a break. You're not pigeonholed to stay here. You can always take a walk, take a beat. However, if you're also looking for further support, if you need to talk to someone, we're going to put a crisis support number in the chat if Gareth hasn't done that already. I don't see the chat here. Yeah, I'm getting a nod. Okay, good. So there's a number 988 for the Canada-wide hotline that we can always connect with if you feel that you needed. Okay. So I just want to put that out there as we're going along. Okay. Next slide. So, what does self criticism actually do to us? So, a lot of people mistake their inner critic as a motivator, as if it helps them, right? But here's what it actually does it actually sends us into fight, flight, or freeze mode because it activates our stress response signals. And what this does is it actually causes our cortisol levels to rise. Cortisol is that stress hormone that we don't want to have. It's not great. And this makes it a lot harder to access the parts of the brain that are responsible for those executive functions like problem solving, memory, impulse control, all the main facets that we need. We can see that these challenges that come with self criticism are actually not conducive in the slightest to helping you or motivating you. So, what is self compassion? I want you to think of self compassion as the antidote to self criticism. It is the opposite of self criticism. And no, 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 no. This is not just being nice to yourself. People get that wrong all the time. This is actually helping you to calm your nervous system. Self compassion allows you to re engage your executive functioning skills. And this is something that we all need a little bit more of. What self compassion is not. So, self compassion is not letting yourself off the hook. All right. Self compassion doesn't mean that you stop growing or stop trying, right? It means that you stop attacking yourself as a strategy for growth. I'm going to say that one more time. It means that you stop attacking yourself as a strategy for growth. This is imperative that we internalize that idea. This is a very powerful shift, especially for those who have ADHD. Okay, because more often than not, you've internalized this idea that in order to get the results you're looking for, you have to be very hard on yourself. But that's not the case, right? In fact, it's the opposite. So, introducing Dr. Kristen Neff. Dr. Kristen Neff is sort of like the guru of self compassion research. She is the bee's knees, if you will. Now, she has really boiled it down to three different pillars when it comes to self compassion. Number one is mindfulness, number two is common humanity, and number three is self kindness. What the heck does that mean? Okay, well, in practice, it's going to look a little bit different. So, with mindfulness, the first step, in other words, is just accepting how you're feeling, but not becoming consumed by it. All right, that's the key. You don't allow yourself to become consumed by the feeling. So, when you are in that toilet vortex of beating yourself up, essentially what you're going to do is take a step back and go, I'm actually kind of being a jerk to myself right now, right? Just acknowledging it. That's the first step. The second step, that common humanity, what she means by that is to remind yourself that you're not the only person with this struggle. You're not alone. You're not defective. You're not the only one to have likely struggled with whatever you're going through. And that just makes us feel less alone in it. And then lastly, we have the self kindness. So, what this is going to look like is, well, it's the third and most important step of the whole self compassion, if I'm being honest with you, all the pillars, because you take a step back and you ask yourself, what would I say to a friend in this situation? We are always more compassionate towards other people than we are to ourselves. So, that perspective shift will allow us to kind of soften those edges around the criticism. All right. Love this quote. Through self compassion, we become an inner ally and not an inner critic. I'm going to share something with everyone here, just because I'm in the mood to share. The other day, I actually spilled an entire cup of juice on my desk. Like, not just a little bit, I'm talking like the biggest cup I own. And it was 30 seconds before I was supposed to hop on a client call. So I was like frantic. It's all over my keyboard. My keyboard is still sticky to this day. Like some of the keys are like, but essentially, in that moment, I clocked myself saying, "Oh my gosh, you're such an idiot." And I had to take a step back and go, "Whoa, that's not very nice. Like that's really mean." I'm not the first person to spill an entire cup of juice or coffee or whatever on my desk. I can promise you it won't be the last time. I'm pretty clumsy. And that's certainly not how I'm going to speak to a friend, right? So then that sort of encouraged me to shift to a more compassionate statement. The best thing I could come up with in that time was, well, it happens. It happens. And what that statement of it happens does is it allows us to move forward, right? Self-compassion reduces the shame. It supports our ability to regulate our emotions in real time, and it allows us to get unstuck. Okay. All right. Now here's the good stuff. These are the tools that you can kind of adopt and use on the fly as you're going along. So, what can we do in that moment when the inner critic is getting very loud and it's flaring up and it's being super loud and annoying? These are some of the tools that my clients tend to jive with the most. Okay, so naming the critic. What does this mean? Well, we want to give your inner critic a silly name, something to create what we call psychological distance from it. Okay. So some creative ones that I have heard are like the drill sergeant, anxious Annie, those kinds of things. I think they're really creative and cute. And they tend to work really well. When you're noticing that inner critic coming up, you're saying, oh, there's anxious Annie coming up again. Okay. It sounds a little bit weird, but trust me, it works. Then we also have reframing. So, reframing is very powerful. This can often look like, again, what would I say to a friend right now in the situation? Or imagine that you're speaking to a child, or even imagine yourself as a child, right? And they're describing a mistake that they've made or a situation that is similar to yours. What do you tell this child? How can you practice that same compassion towards yourself? I don't think you'd go up to a little kid and be like, gosh, you're such an idiot. I'd hope not. So that will just allow us to do that perspective shift. We also have the silly voice one. This one's good. So if we can try to kind of shift or alter the voice in our head to make it something really ridiculous, something that like you couldn't possibly take seriously, it just allows you to kind of distance yourself from it again. I don't know if we have any reality TV fans in the house tonight, but I'm getting some. Yeah, that's good. That's good stuff. I like to use, and it's kind of niche, but Kourtney Kardashian's voice because it's so monotone that it always makes me laugh. But that is my inner critic's voice. Okay, it's Kourtney Kardashian. She lives in my head. I don't know about you guys, but you can think about what will work best for you. We also have body check. This is very helpful as shame is often very physical. It will manifest in very physical ways in our body. So, are we clenching? Are we shutting down somewhere? We can try to shake it out. Maybe we need to stretch. Maybe we need to change our posture up, right? Something like that will just help to kind of reset us. And lastly, we have grounding. This is the tried and true way to help regulate yourself in the moment. This will also help you to kind of shift gears from that critical self talk to the present moment and what's going on around you. If you haven't already done grounding before, because I know it's pretty common out there, um, just know that it is your five senses. So I'm just going to run through it really quick so everyone has an idea of what that looks like. If I were to ground myself right now, I would ask, okay, what are five things I can see around me? Got my cup of tea, got my AirPods, got my mouse, got my sticky keyboard, and I got a coaster. All right. Now, what are four things that I can touch or feel around me? I can feel my sweater, can feel my hair, can feel my desk, and I can also feel the blanket on my lap. Now, what are three things that you can hear around you? I can hear my fan. I can hear the sound of my air conditioning kind of humming a little bit. And I think I can hear my dog getting into something in the other room, which I will have to deal with after this call. So there are three things I can hear. Two things I can smell. I can smell my hairspray and I can smell my cup of tea. And lastly, one thing I can taste. I can taste berries from my herbal tea that I'm drinking. And that is grounding. By the time you've asked yourself, what is one thing I can taste? You're going to feel a lot more regulated. All right. It's a very helpful tool. All right. Now, as we went through a bunch of those strategies just now, I'd be curious to know which strategy will you try out for when your inner critic gets loud? Again, just as a little refresher, we have naming it, we have reframing it, we have the silly voice, the body checking, and the grounding. So feel free. Yeah, grounding. Awesome. That one's my favorite too, Nick. It's a great one.
I
Some.
I definitely do the silly voice.
The silly
The
voice,
silly
yes.
voice.
I love it. I love it. Do you know who your silly voice is what it's gonna sound like?
Ah, there's this guy from Love Island, the new show.
Yes.
Kendall.
Kendall. Oh, I know exactly
He's
what you're
all these
talking about.
impersonations and stuff. I can just imagine it in
Yes.
my head already.
That is perfect. I love that one. I love it. Yes. That's such a good one. Feel free, anyone. You can steal that. That's a great one. Yeah, we got definitely grounding. Amazing. Naming and grounding. Naming and grounding. I love it. I love it. Awesome. All right. Well, feel free to keep popping them in the chat as they come up for you. Okay, everyone? All right. So now we're going to practice. Now we're going to take a moment and we're going to actually try this out. Okay. Now, you don't have to write your answers in the chat. You don't have to share them if you don't want to. But this is actually just going to pose as a good opportunity for everyone to practice the skills. Okay. So, everyone, try to take a moment. I want you to think about a time where you have missed a deadline, you forgot something, maybe you zoned out. And I want you to reflect on the following questions. What did your inner critic say? How did that make you feel? If you could respond with compassion instead, what might you say? What might you have needed in that moment instead of more criticism? So you can take a moment, write this down on a notebook, type it on your phones, whatever you feel. And I'm just going to give everyone a couple minutes here to complete that. Also gives me a chance to check on the chat. And for anyone that just joined, and if you're confused, we're just in the middle of doing this little reflection activity. If you're like, why is it quiet in here? Feel free to take a moment and jot down some of your answers there when you reflect on a time where you were really hard on yourself. And I'll give everyone one more moment. Okay, I think we're gonna go on to the next slide. Everyone good? Everyone good? Perfect. Okay. So it is very important to me that everyone leaves here today with actual tangible take-home strategies that you can apply in your day-to-day, right? Because you're spending your precious time here, your evening with me. So I want to make sure you're getting some good tools out of it. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at some self-compassion prompts. We're also going to explore some mantras for when that brain gets mean. And then we're going to look at a reflection tool. This one's my favorite. We are so lucky to have some of the best designers on the team that have created the most aesthetic resource that we will circulate towards the end. It's all Shift branded. It looks really pretty. So you don't have to worry about like writing down everything. It's going to be in that resource for you. Okay. But we'll start off with the self-compassion. There we go. So, with self compassion, what we want to do here with these prompts is we want to use these prompts when we're stuck in that cycle of self criticism. All right. So, again, what would I say to a friend in the same situation? I know this keeps coming up. It comes up for a good reason because it works. What feels hard about this moment? Is this something that other people struggle with? Usually the answer is yes. What's the kindest response I can offer myself right now? All right. And now, as a little hot tip, you can write these down on a sticky note, put them near your desk, put them on a mirror, whatever you're going to pass by more often. And you can use this as a quick pattern interrupter when you're finding yourself in that cycle of self-criticism. You should see my mirrors. There's a lot of post-its going on here. All right. This next one that we have here, these are mantras. So these are things that you're just going to repeat. These are short grounding phrases that you can repeat out loud or even silently in your head when that critic flares up. Done is better than perfect. Gosh, this one, I say it all the time to myself. Done is better than perfect. Mistakes are proof of learning, not proof of failure. We love that growth mindset. I am doing the best I can, and that is enough. One hard moment does not define my worth. Oh, I know, right? It is such a struggle. And actually, I'm really glad that you brought this up because when it comes to all these different tools, right? Like it's a practice. And I'll be honest, the first time I was telling myself, done is better than perfect, done is better than perfect, it wasn't really tickling my brain. It took a lot of practice, right? And through trial and error, we start to learn which ones work best for us, right? So if it hasn't worked for you, I invite you to try maybe some of these other ones. I think we can all resonate with that experience of trying these out and it's like, oh, it's just not working. Just not working. All right. This next one is a quick self-compassion reset break. This we can use whenever you're in that spiral again and we want to interrupt it, when we want to take a break. And you can use this as many times as needed. We start with a 30-second pause. So we take a break, we pause, we breathe. Then we acknowledge the feeling. This is hard. This is embarrassing. This is terrible. Whatever the emotion is, we're going to acknowledge it. Connect it to others. You're not alone in this experience. Are you the only person to have dealt with this challenge? Probably not. And then we want to offer that support inward. May I be kind to myself in this moment, right? And again, just like with everything else, it's repeating it and repeating it until your brain hears it, until it sticks. There's no magic number, but as many times as you need. Okay. Now, here is the big one I was telling everyone about earlier. This is the talking back to your critic reflection activity. All right. So, this is a tool that you can visit anytime you need. All right. So when we're thinking about the questions here, so it goes, what happened? What did your inner critic say? How did that make you feel? What would you say to a friend going through this? That friend question again. What's a kind, true thing you can say to yourself? Oopsies, went too far. There we go. Don't touch my mouse, Sarah. What's a kind, true thing you can say to yourself right now? And what do you need right now? All right, so this is just a bit of an expanded version of that earlier activity that we started to do there to get you thinking about those things. But now we're going to show you how we would actually fill this out in practice, what this would actually look like. So, with the consent of my friend, who was also a therapist, she had an issue at work the other day where she was late in submitting something, and it was for a grant. So she was pretty bummed out, actually, and she was beating herself up. And she's like, Sarah, I know all the tools. I know what to do to make me feel better. They're not working. They're not working. And so we actually sat down on the phone and we went through a bit of this reflection together. And I have her consent to share, which is wonderful. So we would start with identifying the situation. You were writing what actually happened and just the facts alone. All right. So I submitted a report late because I lost track of time and I became overwhelmed. We want to keep it neutral, like you were just an observer. So then we want to tune into what that critical inner voice actually was saying. So in this case, it went along the lines of, well, you're so disorganized. You always mess things up. Um, I just want you to write it down exactly as it comes up in your head, right? No matter how harsh, no matter how mean it is, we're noticing and we're not judging. Then we're going to tune into the feelings that came up for you. So in this case, it's embarrassed, anxious, ashamed, that she felt like avoiding everyone. The reason we want to ask you how you're feeling, I know it seems like a pretty easy question, like, well, I feel like crap about this. We actually want to connect your self-talk to your emotional state, to your feelings, right? So that's the point behind that. Now we flip the script. Okay, so this is for the friend piece. Imagine a friend you love comes to you with the exact same situation. I asked my friend, I'm like, well, what would you tell me? Would you say the same to me? She's like, no, no, I wouldn't. I'm like, that's right. So we came up with, well, obviously, in this case, you're a human. One mistake does not define you, right? This is where that compassion voice really comes in and it starts to soften the edges around the criticism. But then we want to bring that inward, right? So, what's one kind and true thing you can say about yourself? So, for this example, it's actually, I care about my work. This was just a tough moment that I had, but that doesn't mean that I'm a failure. Okay. We want to try to make it both gentle, yet at the same time, we still want it to be grounded in the truth, right? And then lastly, we want to check in with yourself. What do you actually need right now? Maybe it's a deep breath, maybe a walk, or maybe even just to let this one go. This helps us to move forward instead of feeling stuck and just like ruminating in that shame spiral. Okay. Now, just want to add a little tidbit before we open it up to the floor and get everyone's thoughts and questions. As I mentioned earlier, self-compassion is not this like one and done fix. I wish it was. I really wish it was. But like with most things, it takes practice. It's a skill. It's like a muscle. We have to work at it. We have to exercise it. But once we try, once we get it, self-compassion is one of the most powerful ways, one of the most effective tools to interrupt that shame spiral and to help us move forward. So it is very important. And I hope that, everyone could grab at least one little tidbit away from our talk here today, and bring some more self-compassion inward.